there, and welcome to your personalized deep dive. This one is going to be all about decision making, how we make them, why we make them, and how to maybe make them a little bit better. You've sent over a really interesting mix of stuff on this. Psychology texts, economic studies, you name it. It's clear you're ready to tackle this head on, and we are so here to help you unpack it all.
That's right. I've spent a good chunk of my career digging into the how and why of the choices we make. And let me tell you, it's a topic that touches every single part of our lives.
Oh, you are not kidding. One of the first things that jumped out from all this research was just how many decisions.
Yeah.
Like how many we actually make on a daily basis. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, man.
35,000. That's what some studies suggest. 35,000 decisions every single day. I don't know about you, but that kind of makes my brain hurt just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. But the point isn't to make you feel overwhelmed or anything like that. It's more about understanding that each choice, no matter how small, has a ripple effect. They all add up. They create the landscape of our lives, even if we don't realize it at the time.
It's like that saying, life is a journey, not a destination, right? But in this case, it's a journey built on thousands upon thousands of these tiny little decisions. I mean, think about it. What you had for breakfast this morning, that was a decision.
Exactly. Now, you might think that's insignificant, in the grand scheme of things. But did that bowl of sugary cereal, maybe send your energy levels on a roller coaster ride? Making it harder to focus later in the day? Or did you choose something that set you up for, a really productive day? Even something as simple as breakfast can have a ripple effect. Those choices, big and small, can cascade throughout our day, influence our week, even shape our long-term goals.
It's like a chain reaction. Okay, so we're constantly making decisions, and they all have these interconnected consequences, but how do we actually make those decisions? The research you sent over seems to point to a bit of a classic showdown, head versus heart.
It's a tale as old as time, logic versus emotion. And while it's a useful way to frame the conversation, I think, it's important to remember that it's rarely one or the other in isolation. In reality, we use both logic and emotion to navigate the decision-making process. It's more about which one is in the driver's seat at any given moment.
So true. Sometimes a good old-fashioned pros and cons list is exactly what you need, and other times you just gotta trust your gut. Thinking back on a decision you made recently, do you think you leaned more towards logic or emotion?
That's a really interesting question. I suppose my most recent big decision would be choosing to participate in this deep dive with you today. And honestly, it was a combination of both. Logically, I knew it would be a fantastic opportunity to share my knowledge and experience with a wider audience. But there was also a sense of excitement, a desire to connect with someone who's clearly as fascinated by the human mind as I am.
I love that. See, even the experts aren't immune to a little tug from the heartstrings. But let's dive a bit deeper into the logic side of things. When does that analytical powerhouse really take center stage in our decision-making?
Well, according to the research you sent, logic really shines when it comes to overcoming bias.
Yeah.
Handling complex situations and coordinating large-scale efforts.
Okay, so it's like logic is the ultimate project manager.
Exactly. It provides a framework for objective analysis, which is crucial in so many areas of life. Think about fields like medicine or finance, where even the smallest miscalculation can have, huge consequences. Logic helps us minimize risk by encouraging us to look at things systematically.
Right, it's like building a house. You wouldn't just start slapping on bricks without a blueprint, right?
Precisely. And speaking of blueprints, did you know that Walmart, that retail giant with over 2 million employees, relies heavily on logic-driven systems to manage its workforce and operations?
Wow, 2 million employees. That's mind-boggling. How on earth do they keep track of everyone? It really is something.
It's like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of logistics.
It is. They use sophisticated algorithms and data analysis to optimize everything from inventory management to employee scheduling. Oh, wow. That's incredible. Okay, so logic clearly plays a vital role, in keeping things running smoothly in a massive operation like that. But you mentioned earlier that logic has its limits. When does it fall short?
One of the biggest limitations of logic is that it assumes we have access to all the necessary information, which is rarely the case in the real world, right?
Right.
We often have to make decisions with incomplete or even inaccurate data.
Yeah, that's so true. Life isn't exactly known for handing you all the answers up front, is it?
Exactly. And that's where intuition comes in, those gut feelings that often guide us towards the best course of action, even if we can't, fully explain why.
It's like that feeling you get when you meet someone new and instantly know whether you can trust them.
Right.
You might not have any like logical reason for it, but something just feels off or it feels right.
That's a great example. Our brains are constantly picking up on subtle cues and patterns, even when we're not consciously aware of them. And these subconscious observations, they can manifest as intuition or what we call gut feelings.
Oh, so it's like our subconscious mind is doing all this behind the scenes work for us, processing information
Yeah.
and sending us these little signals.
Exactly. And those signals can be incredibly valuable, especially in situations where logic alone falls short. Think about experienced firefighters, for example.
Okay.
They often talk about developing a sixth sense for danger, an ability to assess a situation,
Yeah.
and make split-second decisions that save lives.
Wow. So they're not pulling out a pros and cons list in the middle of a burning building, are they?
Not quite. They're tapping into years of experience in pattern recognition. Their brains have learned to quickly process information about things like fire behavior, building layouts, and human behavior. This allows them to make intuitive leaps that might not make sense on paper, but often lead to the best outcome.
Wow. That's a powerful example
Mhm.
of how intuition can sometimes trump logic in
Yeah.
certain situations. Like their brains have developed these mental shortcuts based on, years of experience.
Exactly. In psychology, we call these mental shortcuts heuristics.
Heuristics.
Okay.
They're essentially rules of thumb that our brains develop over time.
Yeah.
To help us make, quick decisions without having to overthink everything.
So heuristics are like these pre-programmed responses that allow us to kind of bypass that whole like logical reasoning process.
In a way, yes. They're often based on past experiences, patterns, and learned associations. For example, imagine you're playing chess. You see your opponent move their queen a certain way, and instantly you just know it's a trap.
Right.
You might not be able to consciously articulate why you know it's a trap, but your brain has recognized a pattern from previous games.
That makes sense. So heuristics can be incredibly helpful in situations where you need to make quick decisions like that. But they're not foolproof, are they?
Absolutely not, because heuristics rely on past experiences and patterns. They can sometimes lead us astray, especially in novel situations, or when we encounter information that challenges our existing beliefs.
So it's all about finding that balance between logic and intuition, knowing when to trust your gut, and when to maybe slow down and analyze the situation a little more carefully. But what about emotions? Where do they fit into all of this? Our research highlighted how deeply ingrained emotions are in who we are, influencing everything from major life choices like relationships to, everyday brand preferences. It's funny, isn't it? We talk about logic and emotion as if they're those two totally separate things. But like when it comes to making decisions, our emotions are always there in the background, influencing us even when we don't realize
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Emotions are like these fundamental drivers of human behavior. It's not just about, fleeting feelings either. They're deeply rooted in our evolution. They play a vital role in our survival.
Right.
Think about it. Fear keeps us safe from danger. Love motivates us to, care for our children. And even anger, as potentially destructive as it can also be this powerful catalyst for change.
And it's not just about like the immediate experience of the emotion either, is it? Like our research talked about this really fascinating concept. I think it was called emotional carryover, where feelings from one area of our lives can kind of spill over and then they start influencing decisions in completely different situations.
Yeah, emotional carryover. It's a subtle thing,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly powerful. It happens all the time.
So give me an example.
Okay, so picture this. You have a super stressful day at work, right? Deadlines are looming. Your boss is on edge. You get home, you're already feeling drained, and then suddenly you find yourself snapping at your partner over something trivial, like who forgot to put the dishes away or something.
Oh man, I've been there. It's like the emotions from that stressful workday, they kind of follow you home, and then suddenly they're changing how you interact with the people you love the most.
Exactly. The emotions from one part of your life, they're carrying over into another. And it happens all the time often without us even realizing it.
Ah,
And it's not just our personal lives either. There was this one study that found that even something as simple as a sunny day can impact the stock market.
wait, really?
Yeah, they found a positive correlation between sunny days and stock market performance. And this was across 26 different countries.
You're telling me that investors, that they're more likely to make a risky trade when the sun is shining? That's wild.
It's true.
Okay, so I guess if I'm about to make a big investment decision, I should probably check the weather report first.
It couldn't hurt, right? But joking aside, this is just one example of how powerful and how pervasive emotional carryover can really be. Our emotions, they're constantly influencing our perceptions and our choices, often in ways that we're not even aware of.
Which kind of brings us to maybe the most surprising statistic from all the research that you sent. A study from Harvard Business School, they found that 95% of our purchase decisions happen subconsciously.
It's a big number, right?
That's almost all of them. I had no idea that so much of our decision-making was happening below the surface.
It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It challenges this idea that we're always in control,
Yeah.
making these rational, deliberate choices. But it doesn't mean that we're powerless. What it does mean is that we need to understand these deeper subconscious motivations, what drives those snap judgments, what past experiences or ingrained biases are shaping our choices without us even realizing it.
So if 95% of our decisions are happening on autopilot, so to speak, how do we become more conscious creators of our own lives? What are some practical takeaways from all this research that can help us make better decisions?
Well, I think it starts with awareness. Recognize that we all have biases. Don't be afraid to question your assumptions, especially when you're making important decisions.
It's like that saying, don't believe everything you think, right? We have to be willing to challenge our own perspectives.
Exactly. And one way to do that is to seek out diverse perspectives. Talk to people who have different backgrounds, different experiences, people who have different opinions than your own. This can help you counteract your blind spots and help you see the situation from multiple angles.
It's like getting a second or third or even fourth opinion on something. The more perspectives you have, the more informed your choices are going to be.
Precisely. And don't discount the role of emotion. Acknowledge your feelings even in situations that call for logic. If you're feeling stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, it's going to influence your decisions whether you realize it or not.
Okay, so don't try to fight against your emotions. Acknowledge them and figure out how to work with them.
Exactly. And finally, give yourself time, especially for big decisions. Let emotions settle, gather more information, and avoid making those impulsive choices that you might regret later.
Be present, be open-minded, and give yourself time to breathe. That sounds like solid advice. But all this talk about subconscious decision-making, it makes me wonder, does that leave any room for free will at all?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a question that philosophers and scientists have been debating for centuries. And we certainly won't solve it here, but it's definitely something to ponder.
It definitely is. In fact, maybe that's the perfect topic for another deep dive. But for now, we're going to wrap things up. A huge thank you to you for sending over all of this amazing research. We had a blast diving deep into the world of decision-making with you.
It was my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, keep those deep dive requests coming. Until next time, stay curious.